Professor in Residence, Department of Kinesiology and Nutrition Sciences. He's going to discuss pedagogical practices to successfully build and lead online courses. I'm going to drop a link in the chat. We will use this Google Sheet as a worksheet, adding information to the question asked. The first step is to click the link, then add your name to the attendance section, and Dr. Van Bailey will share his screen, but you can actively be involved by utilizing this document. I'm going to hand it over to him to get started.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I sure am excited about this. If you wouldn't mind, I'm actually going to share my screen. When I do that, like we mentioned, actually one of the things I dislike about sharing my screen is I lose you. I'm not able to see you anymore. So again, feel free to use the chat. Put any questions that you have in the chat. I would encourage you. One of our themes is going to be about engagement. So feel free to unmute yourself, speak up. And speaking of, can somebody just confirm you're seeing that same shared sheet?
Yes.
I am.
Perfect, perfect. I will tell you that I'm so excited about this course. And when I started going through, I kind of stalked some of you. I saw who reserved, who was RSVPing, and I went online and looked up. And I'm so excited to share what I consider some of my really powerful knowledge with you. I'm doing things a little different because I teach a little different. I am unique. Most people call me Doc Doc. And if we had another hour, I would share this video. It takes 4 minutes, but it's like my origin story. I would love for you to watch it sometime. I just want to tell you real quick, my name Doc Doc is because I have 2 doctorate degrees. I was a chiropractor in town for about 15 years. These hands have been on another human 25,000 times. 25,000 patient visits. That's the experience. And then I got into anatomy. And so I went back to school for higher education, Doctor of Education. And specifically, I studied adult learning and science classes, right? How do you become more successful? And how do we help students become more successful? So that's my goal of this class. And I want to show you some of the things I do as I go through. So like here on this top part, I'll link the funny pictures. If you follow that, you'll just see some memes I made. And it's things I do to keep things engaging. I saw a couple of people had some issues getting their names in here, so that's not a problem. If you get your name in the chat, we'll make sure and add it in here so everybody will get taken care of and everybody will get credit. Before we end today's session, and my goal is to end this 5 minutes early, so in 35 minutes, I want to give you 5 minutes. My goal for this, before you leave, make sure your name is on here. I use within the footer this note here, just stay on this page. One of the problems is as we go through online education, it's hard to keep a group of people in different places together. And so one of the things we're going to do today is look at what happened since COVID. And before I get into reading to you, and I'm not going to read everything to you because that's not me, I'll just kind of crash course. I came to UNLV to teach anatomy and physiology programs. And I took over as lab coordinator, and now I've moved up to faculty member. I currently have 600 students this semester. In our A&P program, we have, I'm going to say 1,000. Last time I looked, it was 981 students. And so we have these huge courses. But I want to tell you, what we build doesn't feel like isolation. And so that's why I was honored to be able to share my information about pedagogy. By the way, somebody tell us, what does pedagogy mean?
My understanding is it's not what you teach, but it's how you teach.
Gosh, what a perfect answer. I think your understanding is right on. It's not what I teach, it's how I teach. Beautiful. And then we're going to talk about how this kind of changes in an online environment. Gosh, that was such a great answer. We know that COVID basically forced all formal education, at least for a little while, onto online teaching. So what I want to do is we're going to go through 4 learning objectives, and these are going to build on each other. And my goal is to get through, I know this is crazy, 9 pages of work with you today. That's how I want us to do it. But I also want us to be engaged. So let's look at the first thing we're going to do, our first learning objective. We just want to discuss and appreciate a dozen benefits and challenges to any form of online teaching and learning. Okay, here's some kind of guidelines for what we're about to do. We're just going to have a discussion. We can talk out loud. We can unmute ourselves. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can see the chat. We can use that. But our goal is going to fill in the list we're going to see on the next page. We're not going to get lost in definitions right now. This is just about talk about your experiences of being an online either student or maybe you've done some online instruction. So our first group goal is to fill this in. If you have access, you can type directly here. Again, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. We can also use chat or you can speak up.
I see some people adding things to the chat, but I'll kick it off for the verbal conversation. One of the challenges I think I see most from not just the teacher perspective, but also as a student is that if the student has a gap in their understanding and they want to fill that gap, it has to sometimes happen asynchronously. And so there's a lag between when a student has a question and when they get an answer. And in that lag, you never get that student the answer because they might direct their attention to something else or something takes more importance. So I think that's one obstacle.
That's a great point. And sometimes that adds to the emotion, right? We've all like sent that complaint to customer service and then waited. And we all know that you don't calm down while you're waiting, right? You just get more and more anxious. So great point, definitely that lag. What other things do we have going on with just in general? Things that you've experienced. Anybody have a Netflix account? I'll give you a hint, that's online. Does that always go perfect?
No, it doesn't. There's buffering, there's disconnections,
There's addiction. No, I'm just kidding.
Yes. What about looking up, getting directions from while I'm driving? Is that always perfect? Is it always safe when it suddenly starts yelling, turn left now? Does it matter if the information is correct if it puts you in danger?
I've definitely had students attend my class while doing dangerous things. Unfortunately, I think it offers an opportunity to do that.
And I agree. And while we're completing this list, and we'll spend just another moment, then I'll kind of share it and we'll see where we are. It definitely is the challenges, right, of getting everybody focused on one thing. So one of the things I meant to start this session off with, I can't believe I have 2 notes in front of me and I haven't looked at either one of them yet. I have a request for everybody here. For the next 30 minutes, put your phone away. If it's with you, put it face down. I love that many of you are like, oh, I did that already. And that shows a lot about your dedication. But my request is during this session, just keep the phone away and focus on you. So great comment in here. I found online to be difficult with math class. All the feedback was through the chat and the teacher didn't write English as well. Gosh, so many layers of issues with that. I mean, communication in general, whether it's the delayed, do you get feedback right after you submit the exam or do you have to wait 5 days or, you know, all of this. And then if there's language barriers, that definitely amplifies some issues. All right, I'm going to come back to share my screen here and let's see where we are. Beautiful. And so, can someone again confirm you can hear me and see my screen?
we're golden.
Thank you. By the way, I've learned to ask that question. I have too many lectures with a 2-minute silence in there, and everybody's like, "What's he doing?" Well, feel free to speak up anytime you can't hear me. So I love this work in here. Let's take a look at some of these, the challenges, distraction, and multitasking. Gosh, I love that. And then even fancy terms, cognitive resources. I tell you, I'm preparing this class, and I found myself, I want to have like Hulu on, and I want to have Pandora on. And then I'm like, well, if I'm watching that and I'm singing that, I'm not thinking about this. I will share connection with instructors is one of the issues that I've faced for the last year and a half. I shared with you that I average 600 students, and I'm going to share a personal story with you right now. My style is very much connecting with people. When I was in a lab, my standard joke was, my seat is not the one at the front. My seat is the one right next to the student. And many times people would walk into my class and they couldn't find me. It's because I was in third row sitting down next to the student and helping them. So I have a message where I send to students, come to me with any issues. Come to me, I'm going to help you. One of the messages I send to my students in anatomy is the problems in tough classes is people drown silently, right? Think about if you were at a beach and were drowning, you would try to get somebody's attention. You'd yell and scream. But in anatomy class, especially if you're in a room with 200 people, when people start struggling, they withdraw and they drown silently. So one of my messages, and I appreciate that most of the other anatomy physiology instructors carry the same message, is we're lifeguards. We throw lifelines. So I send this message out, right? I get hired at UNLV, one of the most prestigious R1 universities in the world. I get hired at UNLV because of that message I sent. I come to UNLV, my second week at UNLV. I'm working in the anatomy lab, and week 2, we're dissecting hearts. Literally, you've already had several anatomy classes. This is anatomy and physiology. It's called Kin 224, the second one. And scalpels, hearts, sheep hearts, not people hearts. Anyway, so it's very experiential. Everybody has blades, and I've got the whole class pumped up. And this one student says, I need to learn how to log on to my email. And I ignored that student. Why? Because we all have scalpels and we're dissecting hearts. And we're still doing stuff. And while I'm in the middle of going over components of a heart, the student says, I wish I knew how to log onto my email. I got mad. I said, I wish you were focusing on the heart because that's where I am. What I missed was, it doesn't matter where I am. For the student was they couldn't log into their email. Maybe that was keeping them from getting a textbook or keeping them from getting study resources. But I want to tell you, this connecting with an instructor is one of the most important things in education. This student that I'm talking about haunts me because he was a veteran. He was a Marine. I still remember, short, stocky, so proud that he had done 12, 14 years in the military, and now he was going to college. No telling what he had done before. He was overwhelmed. And maybe I was the first teacher who told him, connect with me and I'll help you. And then he tried to connect with me. Unfortunately, it was in the middle of, I had a scalpel in my hand, right? So I share that story because I want you to learn from that mistake. You have to accept, we hear about accepting students where they are. And sometimes online means, how do I turn on my computer? I can't even start thinking about anatomy. I can't start thinking about blah, 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 because I've only got a phone and I didn't know this was an online class. So all of these technical difficulties, storage, access, so much real world problems. I love this list. Oh gosh, more difficult and control for cheating. We won't even get there, but I totally agree that's a major issue. The benefits this group came up with was, number one, the convenience, right? I'm going to be 52 years old in June. I remember TV when there was 3 channels, right? That was synchronous TV. If you wanted to watch something, you had to log on at 8 o'clock on Tuesday. But now think of the convenience of online, right? Even TV, ABC, CBS, whatever it is, Prime, they all have their apps. So convenience of online. diversity. One of the things I am most proud of, if you work at UNLV, and no matter where you go, there are probably programs like this. One of the things we use in anatomy and physiology is called the First Day Access Program. It's specifically, and I don't work for any publisher, I work for UNLV. It's specifically a program that our students have access to all of their materials 7 days before the course opens. So much easier than students who maybe live near campus can get to the bookstore first. So that definitely adds diversity and flexibility. One of my favorite things, opportunity to use multimedia. In my lectures, I will share that I have some, I have been flagged because I don't always copyright and quote the source the way I should. But for example, in Kinesiology 224, we talk about a portion of a cell that's a long extension that moves the cell. Anybody know what part of a cell is a long extension that moves the cell?
Flagellum.
Flagellum, perfect. So there's an episode of Family Guy. Thank you for that, Dustin. Flagellum. There's an episode of Family Guy where he's driving the sperm cell. And at one point, the sperm cell is it's like a helicopter and it's puddling like this. And so I use that clip to show glycolysis. It's not moving. And literally the flagellum is just kind of moving a little bit. And then when he sees the target, he takes off and the flagella starts pumping like crazy. And even the back part of the spaceship starts glowing. What a perfect description of a flagella and how it works. Plus, when I show a little clip of Stewie from Family Guy, everybody loves that kind of stuff, right? The TV show Bones, I have several little clips in there. Anything that gets students' attention, we can put that multimedia in. Definitely we need to follow copyright laws. I'm going to work on getting all of my sources quoted as I should. All right, so I just want to show you a couple, actually, this is a trick one of my mentors taught me. If you don't know, I just highlighted everything in black. So this is what I kind of thought the answers. I wasn't sure how engaged everybody was going to be. And so this is what I thought of before any of you saw it. Definitely, we talked about that isolation in there. We talked about how difficult it was to learn other things. So this is something else that I just want to drive home. In order to do well in my class, you not only have to learn anatomy, you have to learn how to use your computer. And like at UNLV, we use Canvas. Other schools use Blackboard. So students have to learn to use that learning management system. From personal experience, students have to learn to use email. Me sending out 20 announcements doesn't help if a student doesn't know how to check them. So much of what we do, we use Google Calendars, and so students need to learn, just like you did, how to get links and access to different events and maybe video streaming. We definitely talked about how academic integrity is a issue online, but this is something else I think about a lot. And I relate this to an episode of Big Bang Theory where Sheldon says, "Of course I know how to swim. I learned to swim on YouTube." And when we're online, it's so difficult to develop physical skills, right? I mean, even the basics as blood pressure. I can have these engaging activities, and literally you have to listen to the sound, and you've got to hit your space bar to increase pressure, and then you have to do this, and you have to listen, and all that's exactly right. But it's not the same as taking a sphygmomanometer and putting it around somebody's arm and taking their blood pressure.
I would love to tell somebody that I learned how to do phlebotomy online.
Perfect. Yes, 100%, right? And even in 224, we're not going that depth, but when we were in person, we would do a small blood draw and then make a slide and look at that. And then we would also do a prick and do blood typing. And, the power of a student looking under a microscope and being like, wow, that was in my body 10 minutes ago. Plus the other skills. When I think about blood labs, I think about all the other soft skills, like learning to deal with biohazards, explaining to students why you don't put a rubber glove on before you stick a needle into your finger. Why not? Rubber gloves protect you. Yeah, but you're going to stick a hole. Yeah, so don't do that. And then my last thing about online is technical issues are inevitable. In the last academic year, I mean, heck, WebEx went down last Friday. Amazon Web Service. Amazon Web Service is one of the things that powers Canvas. And so if you don't know, there was an outage in December of Amazon Web Service. I think it just lasted like 8 hours or something. Personally, I use McGraw-Hill. I'm very, very happy with their products, but just like all websites, it's gone down sometimes. The benefits I came up with, definitely flexibility and accessibility we talked about. But here's one. I obviously am not afraid to go off script. And sometimes when I'm talking, I say the wrong thing, right? I say lymphocyte instead of leukocyte. And especially if a student asks me a question and I'm trying to take this complex idea and break it down to, Doc, what are the 4 tissue types? Well, let's talk about the 4 tissue types of your car. It's either an engine or it's a cover. You know, when I do that, sometimes I just say the wrong thing. But in my online materials, I've gone back and edited those videos. So number one, they're much more concise. And number two, I made sure that all the words are correct. And just to share the next thing we're working on for anatomy and physiology videos, we're having one of our lab instructors check all of the closed caption, right? Because it's hard to generate acetylcholinesterase. And so all of that's going to make sure everything is accurate. It's been refined. And then also it's been improved. One of the tools in my tool chest that I hope you use, in our class, we have, let's say, 15 chapters. And so I've built a Canvas page called Student Q's and Doc A's for every chapter. And my video that I've embedded at the top of that says that my classroom echoes with great questions. And it's because anytime a student sends me a question about chapter 2 or chapter 7, I put it on that page. And even honestly, when students study that, some of the stuff is going to be on that chapter quiz. But it's amazing that how powerful of a resource that is. So again, if it's online, I'm able to kind of edit it. Going back to that multimedia, we can also support a lot of different learning styles. Some people do better if they're pacing when they listen. I have students who talk about that they want to download the MP4 so they can, well, I want you in my head while I'm walking. Okay, awesome. Other students have to be in a silent room. Okay, whatever works for you. All right, I'm going to move us down to our next idea. We're going to go a little quicker here. Now we're going to get a little more specific. We want some definitions, some strengths and weaknesses going over 3 terms. We're going to define asynchronous, synchronous, and like a hybrid or a mix. I'll tell you, I'm using this chart. Oh, I did reference this one. It just got carried to the next page. This chart comes from the Ohio State University. And I just like this idea to show us the overlap. Let's first define asynchronous. Their definition is basically work is completed at their schedule. You're probably going to get immediate feedback on quizzes or some other assignments and schedule group work when it's convenient for everyone. Their definition of synchronous, my next thing is going to say, let's put this in the real world. Okay, I'm just getting us some definitions. Their definition of synchronous is these are classes attended virtually each week. The instructors and the classmates are meeting at a designated time, so they've got real-time discussions during the class. Excuse me. And then what they called both, I call hybrid or mix. And that's what this real interesting portion is. Students can attend a synchronous or an asynchronous class from anywhere with internet, we should really say. There is some communication issues. What I want to do is take us to the next part. We're going to have an activity in just a second, but what I want to do is kind of show you how I define these and how I implement them at UNLV. Again, my goal is to go over this page in 2 minutes. I'm going to get us to the activity. Most of what I've done for the last year and a half is this, asynchronous online. My resources are all available. I open up a block at a time. and say, I'm just going to oversimplify, but you can download or you can stream online. Some stuff is embedded, some things are links. Everything is assigned in blocks or windows. And we've kind of played with this. I will share a mistake I made when I first went online, was having too few due dates. And so we ended up with a due date where like 10 things were due. The problem with students, some students love that, but if you missed that due date, you were penalized on 10 different assignments. So we've kind of played around with this idea. The main way students engage each other in our classrooms, besides the office hours, are discussion boards. So specific examples, I have lectures for chapters 1, 2, and 3 that are pre-recorded. They have a PDF and PowerPoint files. My office hours are totally optional, and they're probably going to be recorded and broadcasted to the whole class. Just like we did when we started this session, we tell people it's going to be recorded. And if there are some things, like if I have one student, of course, one student talking about grades, I'm not going to record that and share that. But asynchronous, I think of it as the instructor is broadcasting messages. And the main two tools are videos and course announcements. So what exactly does that look like? In my class, test 1 has a 1-hour timer. You can take that test anytime between 11 a.m. and 11:59 p.m. today. Little note, took me a couple of semesters, but using 11:59 is so much better than using midnight. It'll save you headaches. So students have any time today. This exam has a timer on it. When they start the exam, they're going to have 1 hour to complete it during that time. Also, all chapter 3 assignments are due today. So that's kind of a layout for asynchronous. Synchronous, I picture synchronous as simply broadcasting a traditional classroom. Synchronous is the idea of literally cameras in the back. We've got students, instructors attending at designated meeting times. It's a traditional presentation, just in a live format. One of the main differences, if I'm synchronous though, now our assessments are going to be completed at the same time by students. And so an example of this, if I was using this philosophy, my test has a 1-hour timer that must be completed by logging into the proctoring service. I'm going to open up that proctoring service at 10:45 a.m. All the students would take the exam between 11 and noon. So synchronous is just designated meeting times, a broadcast of a traditional. And then really the hybrid or the mix, and I'll share, this is where I'm taking anatomy. Now that we're able to get back online, we have to get our labs in person, right? We have to be able to do those skills we talked about. So a hybrid, one way I think about hybrid classes is like maybe the lectures stay online, but students are in labs every week, some kind of mix. In hybrid, we still have online resources, and there's probably some assignments, but they're all low stakes. Maybe it's a quiz that's only worth a few points, or one of the neat things I've started doing with, I've created these really challenging midterms. And literally like it's a picture of the heart, but there's 10 things to identify. The beautiful thing about it is students have 6 weeks to do it, and it's 100% open book. I love these resources because students can log on, do some work, and then when they get stuck, they can save their work and exit, and maybe go to a tutor session or email an instructor. So if I was going to use an example of this hybrid, I would say something like this. We know that the lectures and the resources and some work is online, but the test is going to be completed today. Please be in BHS 202 and be ready to begin at 11 a.m. And then you would have, whatever I said, an hour or 50 minutes to complete that exam. I'm going to push us straight down because we got to do a little more activity here. So let's find some strengths and weaknesses. We built those lists. One of the things as a student, if you make me do something, tell me why. So we built this list. Let's find some specific strengths and weaknesses that go with asynchronous education. Feel free to add them here. I'm just going to keep presenting my screen, so feel free to type something in here or speak up and I'll type it in. I love this engagement. This is fantastic. And if formatting weird things happen, that's okay. Keep writing. We'll figure it out. What I see for asynchronous online, some of the big ideas, procrastination. Yes, and that's why those due dates become such an issue. We can set students up to fail. Online, it's harder to find redeeming qualities in students that challenge you. Gosh, what a powerful statement. I have pages of, one of the things students have to do is sign off that they met ... And then I get emails to other instructors. I get emails, dear Mrs. Whaley, all kind of interesting things. So communication, right? But also I still have to remind, I think back to that one student. That's where that student is. If they think I'm Mrs. Whaley, then I have to accept responsibility that I failed to connect with them. Because maybe I didn't teach them to use their email. Powerful. All right, some notes about synchronous information. Students always request that I record synchronous meetings, essentially making it available for asynchronous learning, and that just defeats the point. I totally agree with you. One of the comments I've had, UNLV has started a flex program where students have an option of attending. And one of the issues is they've had to create policies about just that. Otherwise, what was happening was it started off with 10 students were attending, and by the third week there was one student attending, and it's like, well, why are we still reserving this big room for an online meeting if everything has transitioned to online? Another weakness is how tailored it is for traditional college student and leaves little room for non-traditional students with full-time jobs. I definitely agree that anytime we start setting those time limits, it starts affecting people's lives, right? And especially over the last 2 years, we've seen, gosh, not only just working or taking care of family members, but the effects of healthcare in the house, right? Or in the family. All right, one more little bit to add in here. So we want to add in some notes about hybrid, a couple of ideas related to either a hybrid or a mixed class. One of the statements that went in here is we live in a technical age and we might as well use it. Gosh, hybrid truly can be the best of both worlds. I love, it's not a Van original, but we've heard about how all the information ever known in the history of humankind is on our phone. But then we forget the code and we can't unlock it, right? Or we use that phone to watch TikTok or YouTube and all these other things instead of really taking advantage of that technology. And I'm guilty of it, right? You guys, I didn't make all those memes because I don't spend time on social media, right? And then another thing is that a hybrid or a mixed class can cultivate in-person skills and interpersonal communication. I totally agree that one of the issues all of our students are facing is regaining those types of skills, those skills of how do I manage a room with 30 people, or how do I walk down this hall and feel comfortable so that social anxiety doesn't affect me. Because my goal is to finish this in just about 6 minutes, I'm going to move us ahead a little bit because I got us a fun activity. So this was me thinking about different types of learning. We looked earlier at different types of learning environments, asynchronous, synchronous, or hybrid. And so I kind of put it together with the idea of Tiger King, right? You guys see that on Netflix? I know I wasn't the only one. So this is me with 3 different ways maybe I watch Tiger King. If you don't know, it was a show that came out about a year ago, and it's talk about addictive. I've seen memes that talk about how like the first episode of Tiger King, you're like, what is this? And then 10 minutes, you're like this. And then episodes 2 through 8, you're just hooked. Anyway. So if I watch Tiger King alone, or any show that we stream, we can put that in there. If I watch it alone, that's an asynchronous online event. The problem was then I didn't have anybody to talk to about it. Remember all those memes, how they were going around? So probably what happened was I watched Tiger King alone. And then I was with some friends later on, and we started talking about it. That's a perfect example of a hybrid or a mixed learning environment. When me and my friends were alone, that was 100% asynchronous. Watching Tiger King, we all did it separately. But then we shared what we learned from it. We shared our thoughts and opinions. Oh, that dude's crazy, and this and that, and this other thing happened. And did you see this? So another thing that we could look at it, what if I watched the Tiger King and you watched the Tiger King? And then we all decided we were going to go to a zoo and see real tigers. In this situation, I again see it starting as asynchronous because we all watched Tiger King separately. But then we had a synchronous meeting where either we met somewhere and rode together or we all met specifically at the zoo. And this was going to build some learning community. It's one of the two things I skipped over here because I want to do this last activity. But I just kind of want to share how it's not so uncommon as we think of. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to go through these 15 examples. And you're just going to unmute yourself. Tell me, following cooking instructions on a frozen burrito, what type of education is that? Asynchronous, synchronous, or hybrid?
Asynchronous.
Synchronous.
Yeah, somebody explain that. What's that mean?
It's on the package and I can read it when I want a burrito.
Right? Isn't that crazy? All right, what
Yeah.
about everything on YouTube?
Also asynchronous, unless it's a stream.
Right? Definitely if we start doing some of the live stuff, that's a different thing. But any video on YouTube, it's 100% asynchronous online. How about if I'm streaming the UNLV's President's State of University address on my phone and I'm at a park?
If it's live, it's synchronous, but if it's, pre-recorded, you can watch it whenever it's not happening.
I love that 100%. Yeah. So we could even add more definitions to really define which category. Or like you're saying, let's see, what do I have? I'm with you. I was thinking a recorded one from that one. And then my next one was, what if I'm watching a UNLV's President's State of the University being shown live in the student union? What do I have now?
That is synchronous.
That's synchronous.
Yeah, I still agree 100%. Yeah, because we're all getting together at whatever time the speech is. We're all at the same place, 100%. I think we've understand now that every Google search ever gave you asynchronous online information. Every Google search. It didn't lead you to a live person that said, hi, what can I do for you? It made you wait, or it gave you pre-recorded information. All right, here's a tricky one. Oh, I just got rid of it. Walk us through this. What about road signs?
I think they're asynchronous, or maybe they're a hybrid.
My feeling is asynchronous, because when do I look at that sign? When I need to. And you look at the sign when you need to, right? So I kind of see it. I mean, and I totally agree. All of these, we could kind of argue some nuances, but I'm just making some points with us. What if it's not a stop sign? What if it's one of those LED signs that's like updated that says maybe there's an accident in the left lane, or 14 minutes till you get to Summerlin Parkway? What about that kind of information?
I would also say asynchronous unless you happen to be glancing at it right when it's updated.
Dustin, that's awesome. Yeah, all I thought was asynchronous, but I totally agree. We could kind of we could take that and say, yeah, I saw it there, so it was synchronous. What about if we were having lunch together? What's that?
That's got to be synchronous.
I'm with you right now. I don't want no virtual sandwich, right? And also a great point. I also want synchronous. I don't want to show up at 11 a.m. and you show up at 2 p.m. I want us all at the same place at the same time. How about everything on Sesame Street or Dora the Explorer or whatever else those kids are watching on TVs, tablets, and computers?
Well, those are both synchronous and asynchronous if they're being broadcast or if they're being recorded, and you can re-access them.
I love that 100%. Yeah, we could go either way. And even the same thing with Netflix and Hulu. I do see now, I was working on this and somebody showed me Netflix has a, what do they call it? A watch party app where like there's certain movies that you can like share a link and everybody gets together. So I totally agree. I was thinking asynchronous for Netflix and Hulu, but we could say, oh, there are some synchronous online formats for that. All right, check this out. You are approaching a four-way stop sign. What is that stop sign?
Well, if it's the same as the road signs up above, it's asynchronous.
Yes, that's the idea.
I mean,
And-
I'm thinking of it more of like, I post the materials online and they're available for me, but I go to them when I need to, right? The asynchronous. So that's the same way it works for road sign, even though it's there all the time. When I get there is the asynchronous component.
I totally agree. So I think, yes, if I'm approaching a four-way stop sign, that stop sign is still asynchronous, just like every sign in the world is asynchronous because people look at it at different times. Like you just mentioned, they look at it when they need to. All right, I had some fun with these last couple. What if we got together and watched the Olympics on TV at a bar? What would we be doing?
That'd be synchronous.
Yeah, right. That would be a synchronous in-person thing, and it'd probably be some fun too. What if you are watching Olympic highlights from yesterday on your phone?
Asynchronous.
Beautiful. Back to that asynchronous. It's everywhere around us, from that burrito to our phones. All right. Now, obviously, what if you're in Beijing? What if you're the one competing in Olympics? Okay, that's going to be a synchronous thing. They're going to tell you when to go, and you're going to be in person. Here's the tricky one. What if you live here in Las Vegas? Your cousin is in Beijing competing at 12:50 p.m. on February 8th. What's it like if we're going to get together and stream it? What are we doing?
Syncing up.
That's synchronous. First thing, yeah. Syncing.
Yeah, beautiful.
But it's using the hybrid formats,
Oh,
which is
beautiful.
what ties, it's like the best of both worlds is you can be a million miles away and still be there, still be present in the same time.
Yes. This last part, I really appreciate that because it's like, I don't know, it kind of could be this. So I really think everybody did such a wonderful job with this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen so I can come back and see you. My goal was to finish on time, and we're pretty darn close to that. I will kind of say we're going to wind this up, but I am going to stay here. Here we go. I will stay on this link for the next 15 minutes or so. I also just want to make sure, go back to the top of that shared Google page. Make sure your name is in there now. Even if you could not get your name in there, I believe Party was able to get all the names added to that section. So just confirm that's up there. If not, put another line in chat. Last thing, keep my email. Reach out to me at any point. The last thing, this is 3 minutes. This is my message to you. And I send this message out to every student. So I want you to come to me for a second. All right. I want you to hear this. In times of crisis, we have to put ourselves first so that we can help others. Think about that situation on an airplane. If there's something happens and the mask falls, who do they tell you whose mask goes on first? Yours or your infant? Yours. Because if I take care of myself, then I can start taking care of other people. One of the issues, our society hates the message I'm about to give you. My name is Dr. Van Whaley, and I give you permission to become a little more selfish. I want you to start putting yourself first sometimes. One of the curses of being an online teacher is that phone. And it easily evolves into a 60-hour work week, you always being on call. And the person that suffers for that is not only you, it's for the students as well, because your work fails. So my message for you is to put yourself first. All right, pop quiz. Now, you're going to be engaged with me. I want you to come up with the 3 most important people in your life. Now, if you got kids, you can just say kids. You don't have to pick your favorite. If your parents are with you, you can say parents. Pick the 3 most important people. And that's how long it takes, right? Nobody's going to spend 30 minutes thinking about this. You know. Now, are you on your list of top 3? Did you make that list of top 3? If not, you missed the whole thing I was just talking about. Me too. And I'll tell you, every time I do this, it makes my erector pilates, the little muscles that make your hair stand up, all of those contract. But I want you to know that take this message home with you. You have to put yourself first. You have to ignore the phone sometimes. You have to not answer that email right away. You have to say, I'm important. I am great at what I do. And in order for me to do that, I got to take care of me. I will share 1 year ago, I went ice fishing for the first time. Maybe if you flip through the memes, you saw that. And so last January, I went ice fishing. Totally crazy, drill a hole in the ice and go out there and stand, and most life-changing thing ever, because there was no phone reception, no stress. And when you're standing on frozen water, you're not worried about student emails. You're just worried about falling through the ice. Over the last year, I've done a lot of fishing. I go to Sunset Park. I go to Tule Springs, which is north of here. And then there's another little park called Lorenzo Park. I have a $40 fishing pole I bought at Walmart. I'm very proud of my $39.99 clearance fishing pole that I take fishing. But it's what I found over the last year. And my wonderful wife and daughter sometimes are like, oh, Dad needs to go fishing, because you can tell he's getting stressed. Find something for you. Put yourself first. And then, and here's the important part, schedule it for yourself. If you're important, put yourself in the calendar. You've got so many other people in your calendar. Put yourself in your calendar. That's the message I have for us today. At this point, we can wind things down. Any thoughts, any questions, anything I can do for anyone? As one student said, Doc, that's heavy. I understand that, definitely that message is. Thank you for the great feedback in here. I think you're going to get a follow-up survey to fill out for this. I appreciate everyone here. You will continue to have access to that page we were just using. So you have my email. Reach out to me and let me know what I can do to help you in the future.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was great.
Thank you, Doctor. So before we end today's session, we would like to thank our presenter for sharing their time and expertise with us today, and thank our participant for joining us today. Before you log off, please take a few minutes to fill out this workshop feedback survey we dropped in the chat. I hope everyone has a great rest of their day. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you. Party, thank you so much for your help today as well.
Of course, I really enjoyed this workshop. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, bye everyone.
Bye.